Hello, everyone. I am Cheryl Crooks, Executive Director of Cascadia International Women's Film Festival. We're so happy to have you here today for the panel discussion, BIWOC on the Block. But before we get to that discussion, I'd first like to thank our festival sponsors this year, KCTS, our major media sponsor, Crosscut Magazine, the Mary Redmond Foundation, and the Washington Arts Commission, as well as all our other sponsors without whom this would not have been possible. The panel discussion today will talk with two of our directors, Robin Cloud, who made the short film $2, and Melissa Lowery, who made the documentary Black Girl in Suburbia. They'll be joined with Terra Renee, who is Executive Director of the African American Women in Cinema organization based in New York. And the moderator for today is Abie Ekenezar, a writer, producer, and director based in Seattle. They'll be talking to us about how women of color are making their voices heard in the film industry, what they had to do to get their films made, and the opportunities that they see for other women like themselves. It's a very interesting discussion, and I'm so glad you're here to hear it. Thanks so much for joining us and for coming to the festival.
Hi everyone, my name is Abie Ekenezar and I'm so excited to be a part of the Cascadia International Film Festival. I have amazing panelists that I get to talk to today and have brilliant conversations with, and I'm also going to let them talk a little bit about their films that are actually in the film festival. But first, I would love to talk to Terra and get a little information about your organization.
Sure. Well, hello, everybody. Cheryl, thank you so much for having me here. It is an honor to be here at the festival and this beautiful panel that I am on. Very excited about the super talent that's been selected to participate in the festival. Our organization is 23 years old. We started because of the lack of opportunities that we discovered for women of color filmmakers, really for women of color in entertainment across the board. But we had a concentration on film entertainment. And we looked at, when we looked at the stats from some of the major unions and saw figures like 0.03% of women of color getting work, we knew there was an issue. And so what was, I called it supposedly a one-time event to talk about this, which happened 23 years ago, end up being an organization. And I'm proud of it, certainly a labor of love, but it really brought awareness to women of color who have the talent to tell stories in this medium. And certainly when we started, it was almost unheard of to try to get a film done through a major film studio, get a theatrical release. It was just, I mean, making a film was like giving birth to 7 kids at one time. But then trying to get distribution, that was times 24. So, but as we continued the process and continued to do events, which eventually evolved into a film festival, and then partnerships with other organizations that enable us to do film screenings and bring more awareness of women of color filmmakers across the country and even out of the country. We are very fortunate to do film screenings in England and Africa. And so we continue in that vein to provide a platform to bring awareness to women filmmakers of color and also provide opportunities through partnerships that will bring awareness and more screening opportunities for these filmmakers.
Thank you so much, Terra. I know, I'm just so excited and happy to be a part of this panel, especially because, like our different areas, we've been going through so much, right? We have had the pandemic, which is obviously slowed films down, filmmaking in general down, especially as independent filmmakers. right? It's definitely made it a lot harder when it comes to producing these films. So I kind of wanted to get a little information about each of our filmmakers here, especially when it came to making your film, and yeah, what was your reasoning to, film the script that you did, if any of you wrote it, and if you can talk about that a little bit. I'd love to hear from Robin first.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Such an awesome panel. Gosh, yeah, so $2 sort of was inspired by amalgamation of all of my crappy day jobs that I've had over the years as I've been pursuing my art. You got to have those money gigs. And before I sort of quit that and decided to focus on filmmaking, I worked at a place that was full of these characters. And so as I worked there, and I only lasted 6 months, as I worked there, I was like taking notes about them all the time, and all the crazy things that were said and done around me. And then I applied to the American Film Institute's directing workshop for women that takes place here in LA, which was an incredible program. And I got into, and so I made my short film under the watchful eye of the staff there and my amazing cohorts there was a group of 8 of us. And we spent a year going through almost like a condensed version of film school. I mean, I went to Howard Film School way back when, but then I went to this AFI program. And so what I think people normally learn in 2 years, we were like crunched down into 1. And then we all had to make a short film. And so $2 was my contribution. And, I tell mostly like stories around Black and Black queer experience. You often see our lives as struggle and only in the coming out arena. And I really want to focus on just us living life and experiencing other things. And yes, there is trauma in this film, but I kind of wanted to take a look at it from a comedic standpoint. I've been a stand-up comic for like 16, 17 years. So that's sort of like the foundation of a lot of my work. Not slapstick funny, but like dark comedy, where I'm talking about all of the stressful and annoying and horrible racist and sexist and homophobic things that happen to me over the course of my life. But they're inspiration, and I just have to laugh. So that's where I started from with $2. And it's done really well. It's had a wonderful, even though it's been a pandemic, a lot of festivals have been able to like pull it together and like this one and be online, and it's been all over the world this year. So it's been really wonderful.
Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful story. I mean, I can just absolutely relate as to Sid, especially being a queer Black person, just like making sure that like people get my pronouns right and all of that. So it's definitely been an interesting struggle, especially depending on like where you live. Like I have a mix of cultures, right? So it's like, where do you do those battles, right? Like, do you do those battles with people who are just never going to change, or do you just stay in the circles of those people who want to uplift you and make sure that you're just emotionally sound? Melissa, I'd love to hear from you about your film. Just love to hear a little bit of information about Black Girl in Suburbia.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I'm really honored to be a part of this panel and to meet all of you. Robin, I cannot wait to watch $2. I'm like to see your film. So yeah, Black Girl in Suburbia. I actually shot it's been almost 10 years actually since shooting the film. And I was a non-traditional college student. So right after high school, I tried college, didn't work out, promised my mom at some point I will return to school. And I did in my 30s with 2 young children, married and all of that. And moving, my husband and I had been living in Southern California for about 10 years and moved back to Portland where we both grew up. And for work, and ended up going back to school. And majoring in media, and then I took my first documentary film class, and I was like, oh my God, that's what I want to do. I want to tell stories. I want to tell stories in this creative way. And so when I graduated, I had a conversation with my oldest daughter who, was sharing about really the first time that she ever felt different, where her kind of rose-colored glasses all of a sudden was like, oh my gosh, I am different because of the color of my skin and my hair. A girl had mentioned, had asked her why her hair was different than everybody else, and her, being the only Black student in her class. And she had asked me, why am I the only brown person in my class? But then asked, why am I the only brown person in my class that doesn't speak Spanish? So she was recognizing, her skin color, but also recognizing that there was a whole group of kids that, had their own language and had their own culture. And so we had this really amazing conversation about, well, first of all, you be the best human you can be in this world, and then and you are a young Black human, and that comes with all of these other things, and sometimes you will often find yourself in spaces where you might be the only one, and dad might be the only one where he is at work, and mom might be the only one, and that's just based off of where we live right now. But that doesn't doesn't take away from who you are as a just being who you are. So that's actually conversation sparked so much in me about my own experiences growing up in a predominantly white suburb in Portland that I had suppressed. And I didn't realize I had suppressed all of these feelings of being a Black girl in suburbia. So I thought I just learned the skills to make a film. And I just had this amazing conversation with my child about this experience. And I was like, I'm going to make a movie. So that's kind of what sparked and generated the film. And I reached out to my childhood friend who also was, we were I think only 2 Black kids in our class out of probably like 300 students, I would say. And I told her about what I was doing, and she was like, are you serious? You really want to go down this road? I was like, if our children are going through the same thing we went through, yes, we need to talk about it. And I remember Googling the Black experience in white suburbia or something, and nothing had like popped up. So I was like, I have to tell this story. Like I know I'm not crazy, because sometimes you feel that way when you don't see a lot of yourself, in your environment, and things happen and microaggressions happen and nobody says anything, and it's like you're the elephant in the room. So I was like, I need to tell this story. So I had no money. Again, I have these 2 young children, and living a life of having a family, and had no idea how I was going to make this film. But Kickstarter had just started to come onto the scene, and so one of my former classmates and again, I was an older student, so I was kind of the mom of all of my my cohorts, but brilliant minds, majority white, the crew that I worked with, and so we did a Kickstarter campaign, and I remember getting, not thinking that anybody would donate to this project, but we raised $2,000, I think, in the first 2 days, and from people that were like, you have to make this movie. You have to make this movie. And Black women emailing me saying, this is my story. I'm 70 years old. This is the first time like I feel a weight has been lifted and somebody's actually sharing it. And that's when I was like, okay, we have to do this. So we shot it probably over a summer and a year, and then 5 years later, I had my film. So and it has really it's interesting, Terra, you talked about like birthing, right? Making a film is like giving birth to 7 children. Well, I do call it my third child.
Yeah.
And I see it as it being something now where it's kind of out there, in the world, like college, and it checks in with me every once in a while, like, hey, I'm doing good. I'm sparking conversation over here, but just wanted to let you know, what's going on. But it is still, it always has been relevant. as we know over what we've all been seeing and hearing and experiencing over this last year and a half or so, how deeply rooted racism, white supremacy is in this country and in all of our systems, and how deeply it affects Black folks and other POC. So I'm really proud of it and the conversations that it continues to spark. And my film has really led me in a career of DEI work, which is what I do currently right now. So yeah, that's my story and intro to Black Girl in Suburbia.
No, I mean that's you. I mean, you're absolutely right. Like I've just seen so many instances when I was younger, you know, when friends were younger, where, you know, I've literally heard people say the phrases, "Oh, you're not Black enough," or, you know, you talk weird, or stuff like that. So, but I really feel, I mean, I don't, it hurts because, like, I don't feel like, you know, everything that we went through last year and now and before is ever going to go away, right? Because this country was literally built on that. You know, it was built on that fear of other races, difference. You know, something that's different is wrong, or you know, whatever the case is. So I'm so glad that, you know, we have a film like that. Now we can actually Google and it's up there, right? So obviously there is this whole timeline, right? There's this whole strategy when it comes to doing a production, from the time that you write it, or the time that it's just a tiny little idea, right, in your head, until it gets on paper, until it gets to, okay, now I need to find a crew, I need to find cast. You know, what was your strategy? What was your process when it came to beginning to end of the idea of putting this into an actual film? Especially, I mean, Melissa, you even talked about kickstarting and everything, and Robin, you talked about having access to the school and the people at the school to be able to help you make this film. You know, what was the entire process like for these films? Because as we know, especially filmmakers who are trying to, you know, get into bringing their own stories to light too. You know, it's really good to be able to talk about this, so that if people have questions, they're just like, okay, well, what do you do? Like, how do you make a movie? Because I'm in a beautiful Black screenwriters group, and I always see that question. All right, I have a script. What do I do with it? You know. So what was that process like for either one of you?
I will say I wrote this script, I mean, the first draft, probably I was in the Kickstarter residency, because I used to live in Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn for 20 years before I moved to LA. So diehard Brooklynite. And so I was in the Kickstarter residency, which was just a program for creatives for a year where we could go and use the space. And we just, you know, people did lots of different things. You know, I was writing, so I wrote this script. And then I was doing a lot of applications and applying, and I was hoping to get into the AFI DWW program. And I applied twice and I got in the second time. And you have to have a project in mind, and you have to submit a script to the school for the application. And so this became my project. And in the context of the school, you know, I did a Kickstarter. You know, I had to raise like $40,000 for this movie. Yes. And so I did that through Kickstarter. I ended up meeting my DP, who was a recent graduate of AFI, because we did some workshops, classes with a cinematographer, and I happened to get matched up with him, and we just like clicked, as you guys know, when you find your crew people, and we just like clicked. We're hoping to work on another project soon, and you know, it just really gelled. And so had to raise all of this money. And they were very strict about like the timeline. So it was like, okay, this is going to be your fundraising month. You have a month to raise all of these funds. And everyone in my class, we all did it, which is unbelievable. And then we had a very strict schedule for casting. And, you know, we had to cast, and then we had to go into scouting and find locations. And so we had about, I would say, like 3.5 months of pre-production and fundraising altogether. And then I shot in July, and I shot in 4 days. Most of it, I know. One location, and then, 2 locations, 1 day at one place and then 3 days at the other at the office. And the office was a space that a friend of a friend's dad has a building, and there's an empty floor. It was an old Disney office. And so we had this whole entire floor, 25th floor of this office building, where people were working around us, but we were on the top floor and like nothing happened. So that was just a blessing, because we were able to set up everything in that location. So we had our food and hair and makeup and costumes, and everyone had their own little office. So it was really, really great. And it was just right up here in Burbank. And then we went into editing. So it was a quick turnaround. Like, I think about it now, and it felt like, a whirlwind in terms of getting it done, because we had a hard deadline. And that was great. And I think I had to turn it in, I can't remember now, but I feel like it was in the fall, maybe November or something like that. Yeah. So that was the process.
That is the fastest I've ever heard on any production I've ever worked on. So kudos to you. Seriously.
Now looking back at it, it was a lot.
Wow.
And it was days,
Yeah, that's amazing. Seriously, Melissa.
Yeah, that is insane. Oh my gosh, I can only like I said, it took me 5 years, so I can't. There were so many times I wanted to drop kick my project, because I just was like, so I can't even imagine that time frame of how much that took. But yeah, I for me, again, never, this was my very first film, had no idea how to do it, did not have any resources. I didn't even have a camera, like literally just graduated. And then I went right into, I'm gonna do this. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I really honestly had no idea. It still shocks me that this film is still, I did do it, that it's there. But my mom, I always went back to it. My mom had always been somebody who was very resourceful, and she would always say, like, take advantage of your resources. So when somebody says, hey, if you need help with that, I'm open, give me a call. Like, you write their number down in permanent marker and you call them, because they said, if you need anything, you let me know. So I went back to, okay, I need to go find my resources. I need to reach out to my resources, because I had nothing. So I reached out to educator friends. I reached out to my family. I reached out to, and as you know, with Kickstarter, right? It's a community resourcing. So I sent everybody who was in my email contacts, people I hadn't even really talked to, and who knows how long, but they got an email, and I said, pass it to 10 other people. I made a list of all of the things that we were needing. Like, we needed interviews with educators and counselors and students, and and I'm like, if you know anybody in these categories, please work with us or reach out to us. So that's really, and it just organically, in doing that and reaching out to people and getting these resources, it just organically came together. And every time it was like, for example, it was so difficult to find Black educators in Oregon to talk to. And every person I would say, at my children's school, the most seasoned teacher there, who had been teaching for 30, 40 years, I'm like, you have to know somebody of color. You have to know, there has to be somebody. And I remember she was like, oh yeah, I do. And then she was like, oh wait, they're an administrator. Like, finding actual teachers in the classroom was so difficult. And I ended up, actually, one day I was picking the girls up from school, and Jayla got in the car and she said, Mommy, I had my first Black teacher today. I was like, what? So I stopped the car. I was like, I'll be right back. I got out, I ran into school, and I said, where is she? And they knew who I was talking about. And it was this woman who was, subbing for the kindergarten class. So I went to her and I was like, I need you to be in my movie. And she was like, what? So it turned out she too was a Black girl in Suburbia, had grown up in Washington. And so she was like, okay, I guess I gotta be. I said, because yes, you need to be. I have been trying to find you for so long. So she ended up in the film. And then another Black woman that, again, just randomly, she was a host for a local radio show here in Portland, and had invited me to come talk about the film. And as we're sitting there and we're doing the interview, and she's like, well, yeah, my students and in my class. And I said, wait, what? You're a teacher? And she said, yeah. And I said, you got to be in my movie, because this was before we were still kind of like filming stuff. And so she was like, okay, but that was how I was finding Black folks and Black professionals to be in my film. And it just, kind of all came together, and finding students to talk to, where people were like, I have a group of young Black girls that, like, absolutely, this is their story. And for what was interesting for a lot of those young women that I interviewed, they had not shared their story before and thought they were the only ones until they heard each other talking. And then it was like, oh my gosh, you too? That's my story. That's, they want to touch my hair, and, they don't think I'm Black enough, or they, the same kind of conversation. But all of those, all of these people that were in my film really came from me just using resources and just reaching out to people. Like, here's what I need, here's the dates, times, all of that. Again, we did 2 Kickstarter campaigns. And then my crew, like I said, really were the folks that I went to school with, my cohort that I was in. And again, most of them were white males, actually, and brilliant minds, super creative. And I hadn't even thought about it until as we were making it. I was like, how are you all feeling about working on this film called Black Girl in Suburbia? I mean, they learned a lot, but it really led us into having more like conversations about their own experiences being white male, and not really thinking that they have a space in that, because they've never had to address it or talk about it, kind of thing. But so it was for just my crew, right? It was like we were having these really amazing conversations on the side. But yeah, gathering, I mean, I had people coming in from the community offering food. Do you need me to, do you need food for a crew? Do you need, my school, Pacific University in Forest Grove, which is where I graduated from, my mentors, who were my professors as well, they were like, whatever you need. If you need a camera, you need equipment, you need to use our black box. So that was, again, that was my resource, right? So it just, this film was being looked after from my guardian angels above. It was just, everything was just kind of put together. But it really was, because I really, like I said, I still am shocked that we got it done, because I had nothing to start with. And so it was definitely community, and having a village, right? Taking a village, and my village really came together in putting this film together.
So one of the things that I was wondering about, this being an experience, right? Any kind of production always being an experience and creating opportunity. You've had your chance now, right? To find your people, right? As Robin said, the people who you want to make films with, right? And I've heard that saying before, right? Where, sometimes a director finds their DP, and that's the person they just want to do all of their projects with. And I've been lucky to do that. I know Robin said that, they were lucky to do that too. Have you gotten a chance, now that you've gone through the film experience, trying to find other avenues when it comes to raising besides just Kickstarter, right? We finally have these opportunities where we can get grants for filming, or scholarships for filming, or whatever the case. For your current film project and future film projects, have you ever had the chance to look into something like that. Because we all want something that's going to make it a little easier. And I always feel weird asking other people for money. I always do. And I love the crowdfunding platform. Kickstarter has its issues, obviously, but just finding like the perfect crowdfunding platform out there too, where it's just one of those situations. Well, they're taking care of their people, first of all, and also taking care of the creators. Have you gotten a chance to look at grants or anything, especially for possibility of future film projects?
I haven't looked at grants yet. I think what's been very nice and a blessing that's happening now is that people are reaching out to me and saying, oh, we want to create a series with this, overarching or umbrella topic or theme. Do you have any stories that might fit into this? And we're going to give you money to make something. And that's just a blessing. I've made 4 films, and now I'm at that point where people are asking me for that. And that's really, really nice. And I definitely feel blessed that that's where I am, and I hope it continues. So, but I obviously I'm open to grants and doing all that stuff. I mean, you gotta make the art, and you have to find a way to do it, and you can be super creative with it.
Definitely.
Yeah, I would. I right now, like, I don't have any current projects right now that I'm working on, but and I have my sisters here in Oregon. There's not a lot of us, but there's some here in Portland that have just some amazing projects in the works right now. And for them, again, it's reaching out to those like local resources right now. And obviously finding sponsors and people that are like, I will give you money to make whatever it is that you need to make. And I know that there's money out there for those projects. It's just finding, the one that will give you complete control in what that project looks like. Because I know sometimes that can be difficult when you've got grants, that there's some restrictions and things and guidelines that you have to follow. But yeah, I mean, I too am not one that likes to ask for money. I will do it for wine and cheese, but I know that's not sustainable. So, I think definitely, especially locally, it's important to kind of reach out to those folks again. And I think that sort of knowing someone that knows somebody is always the key, right? So if you're able to find those people that know, like, I got you, I know somebody that can connect you, that, if you need this, they're there and they can make it happen. So
yeah, that's actually like most of the productions in Washington. The great thing is we have this group finally called like the Seattle Filmmakers of the African Diaspora, right? So it's one of those things that if we want to make our productions just a little bit more inclusive, that's like the group that we go to, and we ask, because it's always nicer. Like I'm so excited. I just got off a production where it was like 95% people of color. The only reason was the 5% was one of those people were the producer. So, it was just so comfortable being around that, right? Being able to joke around with people and spend time with people that look just like you. But for me as a filmmaker, I want to do everything that I possibly can to support my fellow filmmakers, right? And just hearing your stories, I would love to know what, people who are watching right now, like what they could do to actually support you. I have a beautiful organization that's just like, give me your link and we'll share it with our fan base. And there's like a bunch of them. And, it might not be like what we're actually doing, because like I said, I deal with science fiction, fantasy type stuff, more nerd brain here. But if they believe in the project, they're going to share it. So, if there's any way that, you can give us the information, on how we can support you, I would share that stuff to the moon as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say watch our things and spread the word in film festivals. Follow me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Robin Cloud Comedy, because that's the place I go to whenever I have an announcement about a film or a project or a film festival. Yeah, and then $2 film on Instagram also. And yeah, just continue to support. Hopefully I won't have to do a Kickstarter anytime soon. But if I do, can you please donate?
Yeah, same thing. You can support Black Girl in Suburbia. Our website's blackgirlinsuburbia.com, and also on Instagram and Facebook, even though I know that's like a dinosaur social media app these days. But I am a little bit older, but yeah, I think definitely support, but also reach out to your local film and media companies and organizations and ask them what they're doing. How are they being inclusive of the of communities of color and artists in their around them, and see how you can support and fund and help fund some of those projects. But that takes effort. So if you are someone that's looking to wanting to support and help, I think definitely, you know, look locally at what is happening in your community and support those local artists of color as well. I think that's definitely important.
Terra, I wanted to ask you also, like your organization, what kind of support does AAWIC provide?
Sure. Well, presently, through our programs, we offer platforms for women of color to showcase their works. We had the honor and the privilege to have Miss Melissa participate in our monthly media series. She was fantastic. The audience loved her, loved her project. And so we also provide promotional opportunities for projects to help spread the word and to really get the eyeballs on the projects. So that's what we do.
Thank you so much for that, Terra. Okay, so I wanted to ask one more question because we're getting close to being out of time. This is something a little bit more serious. We've been facing the pandemic. We've been facing so many hurtful things, right, in our cities, in our countries, and some of these award ceremonies changing ever so slightly, but they're changing, right? Like we had Oscars, long history of the Oscars being the way that they were, and you know, they're finally showcasing more and more people of color in whether it's directing, you know, main projects, you know, that I mean, had some issues with the Golden Globes. What do you feel like these different organizations, or just, you know, your areas could do more to just help, you know, bring some extra opportunities or light? I know one of the great things that we've got going on in Seattle right now is we knew that there was an issue with productions. We knew that there was an issue with education. We have so many, I don't want to say kids, but, you know, teenagers, young adults who want to get into film who have no idea how to. It's more of a get on a production and learn from there, you know, kind of thing. So I'm getting this opportunity to be a part of this organization called Rising Reels, where we are setting programs between the ages of 9 to 18 to teach kids how to make films, how to make productions, under the umbrella of my production company. Do you feel that the industry itself needs to do more to help those like independent POC filmmakers to not struggle as much as we have been, or as much as we used to? I mean, because there's a struggle still out there. you know, especially when it comes to queer film too. You know, that's still a major issue in a lot of circuits. So do you feel yourself, because you've already heard my opinion, do you feel yourself that, and this is for all of you actually, that this is still an issue? What ways can we turn this whole thing around?
I mean, yes, it is definitely an issue. You know, I think that what these organizations like the Oscars and you know, all the other awards, what they're starting to do is just the tip of the iceberg. Like there's been this drawing going around. Have you seen it, where it's like an iceberg and it says racism, and then underneath it's like an iceberg that's like as big as the whole world? I mean, they're just beginning. It's like the veil has been lifted from their eyes and they're just beginning. I mean, what I always preach is that I feel like that the gatekeepers, the people that are voting on these films, you know, we need to diversify those people. Because they're the ones that are greenlighting films. They're the ones that are saying yes to nominations. They're the ones that are letting us in or not letting us in. And if it's a bunch of, you know, old white people, you know, they're not going to relate to films about anybody else, which is really sad and pathetic, because we're forced to relate to all of their existence, but they don't take the moment to relate to us. However, that's a whole nother conversation. And I will say those people need to change. Like that, the gatekeepers need to change at the studios, at the films, at the film festivals. Every part of it needs to be like thrown out and started over, in my opinion. So I'll help anybody who wants to be an executive,
yes.
you know, or wants to be in a position of power to make those changes. Because
it's very important to start from within.
Value in our art and of ourselves. You know, we can't rely on white people to do that. We see what happens. They don't, and we don't win anything. We're not allowed to be a part of the process. So we just
I would agree with that. I think sorry, Robin.
Go ahead. I can please. Go ahead.
I know I can too, believe me. So yeah, we'll probably have to get just shut off, just, you know, we'll keep going. But I totally agree. And again, the work that I do at my school and just in our community around equity and inclusion, you know, it's this, as we're seeing in all of our systems, education and housing, like all of our systems right now, again, there is this foundation of white supremacy and systemic racism, right, throughout all of these things. And so, you know, when an organization is saying, you know, we need to uplift and support those who, you know, I like to say in constructed margins. Well, to do that, you need to center the people that you consider to be in those margins, right? But when you do that, that means you're going to lose a little bit of something. That might be some power, that might be having to acknowledge your own racism. There's some sacrifice for some of these organizations to do that. If they're really truly trying to be inclusive and what true inclusion looks like, that means centering Blackness, centering BIPOC, other BIPOC folks, and then listening, and then actually doing what they're telling you you need to be doing, right? But that means that they have to sacrifice some things, which, as we know, is difficult for some of these places. But you see Netflix and you see a lot of these streaming organizations that have now, like, you know, Black stories, Asian American stories, right, that are like centered, which is great. But what's happening? Who's at that table, right? What's happening just from an institution standpoint that's going to change, where it doesn't feel performative, right? Where it's like, here's a nugget. Okay, we're gonna nominate a woman of color to be director. Yay, we did it. You got one, you know, and you won't have another one for another 10 years. Like that's not okay anymore, right? Things are obviously changing, and I think that the sooner that you know, organizations like the Oscars and Golden Globes, like the sooner that they get on board and really start to listen and take the lead of BIPOC folks, we'll start to see some of that change. But I'm not gonna hold my breath. But I think that's kind of that's what needs to happen. Organizations need to start taking the lead of BIPOC folks.
Yeah, I had to put my head down a couple of times because I was just like, we are literally dealing with this right now. I'm not going to talk about it, but it's just, you're so right, Melissa, but especially the listening, right? Because you could be an organization and say, yeah, we want to hear your ideas. We want to hear your thoughts. What can we do to change? And then we give you these thoughts. We give you these ideas. We give you all of these regulations.
Which is our emotional labor.
It's like, pay me at least. If you want me to go through a roller coaster, then pay me. Seriously. And that's literally what happened. Like, we gave all of our thoughts, all of our rules, regulations, like, this is what this should do. And it was like, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. And I'm like, are you really? Okay. So yes.
That's the other thing. Don't take bits and pieces and decide, oh, well, we did this piece. Like, no, you got to take all of it or you don't take any of it. That's
yes.
You know, I know we have to get ready to go, but I want to say ditto, concur. I must have accidentally sent all of you my notes via email by accident because you said everything. So thank you. Awesome. Yes. Ditto.
Yeah. It's I mean, we're still at this place, right, where we're trying to do everything that can. So you know, with organizations like the Cascadia International Women's Film Festival, especially for holding these conversations, I thank you.
Yes.
So very much, because we need to continue to keep having these conversations because they are very important. We need to let people know that these conversations exist, you know, and just make sure that people understand that we're here to work. We're here trying to create our own stories. So give us the outlet to do it, because you know, it's so beautiful that there's this influx now, but I mean, it's not enough and it's not fast enough. Melissa, did you have your hand up?
Oh no, I was doing the clapping emoji.
Oh, yeah. I want to thank Cheryl again. Thank you so much for inviting all of us to be a part of this. Thank you, Cascadia International Women's Film Festival, for inviting me to moderate this panel. I have made friends now that I plan on reconnecting with, just to like continue these conversations and just keep creating art. Robin, I'm down in LA a lot too. So I'll definitely do what I can to connect with you. Melissa, you'll literally see me in like 2 weeks. Terra, I would love to continue conversations with you also. And let's share each other's stuff. And once again, thank you for having us on this panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.